Abortion research. Why Republican lawmakers demand a Justice Department investigation. White House meetings. President Joe Biden tries to rally different factions of his own party. Provocative actions. North Korea demonstrates another military missile. And redefining marriage. Cuba considers a countrywide change. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, October 19th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. The University of Pittsburgh is under fire from congressional Republicans charging that human tissue may have been illegally obtained from aborted babies. Some even claiming that organs were removed from babies born alive. They want the Justice Department to investigate those charges. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports.
Nearly a month ago, 100 congressional Republicans wrote this letter to the Attorney General and other senior health officials. One of the co-signers of the letter was Congressman Chris Smith. After he received no response, he's now taking his concerns to their bosses.
Now, I'm suggesting that we go to the IG, the Inspector General. They are supposed to be independent. Laws we think have been broken, and investigate this and look at the University of Pittsburgh.
Senator James Langford says all the reports he's seen is that the University of Pittsburgh is gathering warm tissue, possibly from children outside the womb, or by altering the method of how they do abortions to harvest organs.
That is not legal in the United States. It's not legal for the United States for a reason, because it's abhorrent for us to think about delivering a child and then in their death actually taking their organs. It sounds like something that would happen in some third world horrible situation of torture.
The University of Pittsburgh has repeatedly denied wrongdoing and maintains it complies with applicable federal and state laws.
It's entirely reasonable to be able to ask those questions. Many on the left that are very supportive of abortion continue to push back and say, nothing to see here, move along, it's just another abortion, it's just tissue, it doesn't matter. But that's a child that's actually in the middle of this conversation.
Heritage Foundation's Melanie Israel tells me the issue at hand, unethical experiments are still being conducted with taxpayer dollars.
Using freshly harvested organs from babies who were aborted is something that we don't need. Good, ethical, life-affirming research can be done. There are many ethical alternatives.
God left behind a gift called stem cells, and even the placenta is filled to overflowing with these very, very effective stem cells that can cure.
Pennsylvania law states any human being born alive in the course of an abortion is protected under constitutional law. I'll stay on top of the issue. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
President Joe Biden scheduled no public appearances today. He did meet privately with Democratic lawmakers at the White House. He is trying to salvage his massive and controversial multi-trillion-dollar spending proposals. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, the White House says the president, vice president, and Treasury Secretary met with progressives and moderates, all Democrats. No cameras, no interviews, but lots of questions.
Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema, back in the U.S., arrives at the White House ahead of a meeting with President Joe Biden. Her visit was not on the president's public schedule, but the two have been talking about what stays and what goes in the president's huge spending bills.
The president still believes that Build Back Better will not add a dime to the national debt?
Correct, it won't.
Why should Americans believe that?
Because it won't.
And if Democrats cannot agree among themselves to a deal, it could put the president's plans in jeopardy.
I'm not going to set a new deadline today. I will just point you to the fact that today he is spending virtually nearly every minute of his day meeting with members of Congress, and I think that's a reflection of how urgent he feels moving things forward.
The administration's Build Back Better and the bipartisan infrastructure deal, which are two separate items, include everything from lower child care costs, free community college and tax cuts, to money for roads, bridges, and high-speed internet.
Everyone understands the stakes. We have to pass the president's agenda. Democracy is at stake. We have to show that we can govern.
President Biden is also using social media, of course, to push his economic agenda, warning on Twitter that if it doesn't happen, we risk losing our edge as a nation. Passing the Build Back Better agenda will help us regain the momentum that we've lost.
But countering on social media, the GOP writes the Democrat Party is in disarray. Republican leaders also say while Biden claims that his socialist economic plan for America will cost $0, it is evident his tax and spend policies are crushing the working men and women.
Senator Joe Manchin also met with President Biden today. He, of course, is a key player in all of this. Tomorrow, President Biden heads to Scranton, Pennsylvania. That's a very familiar place to the president, of course. That's where he's from. Is to continue pushing for his economic agenda. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Southwest Airlines has canceled its plan to put unvaccinated employees who are waiting for religious or medical exemptions on unpaid leave. The move follows recent widespread flight cancellations. The airline blamed in part on staffing shortages. Airlines are considered federal contractors and are expected to follow the Biden administration's COVID-19 vaccine mandate for all federal employees. And joining us now to talk more about this is Christopher Bedford, senior editor of the Federalist. Chris, welcome back. Always good to see you. I know that you've been following this story. Why do you think Southwest did this about face, and do you think that other companies may follow suit?
Oh, it's actually, this is great to see, this action that's coming from the actual pilots and from the other staff on these airlines saying that just because you're my employer doesn't mean that you get to push me against my religious convictions, against my doctor's advice. And that's what's going on right now. That's what's going on across the country for employees who don't have a union or a more dangerous position. This kind of shows, and I hate to sound like a Leninist, especially in a Catholic program, but this goes to show that the power that the workers do have over their employers, especially right now when you see wages rising, the difficulty in hiring unskilled labor, forget about skilled labor like Southwest Airlines requires. Employees do have a lot of power to make a difference here, and Southwest has shown that they're able to push it back. They came up with those ludicrous excuses like weather and FAA with there's no facts at all that could back it up to try and get out of trouble, but the trouble kept on coming, and fortunately, we've seen other airlines already say that they're going to back off these pushes as well because they don't want to end up in the same boat that Southwest just did.
Yeah, Chris, I'm going to follow up to that question. What do you think this means ultimately for this federal mandate?
Well, right now, the mandate's largely unenforceable simply because they don't have enough people to enforce it. There's not remotely enough inspectors that could go around demanding these kinds of things. Secondly, it hasn't really been tested fully by lawsuit. There's a misconception in the United States that because we've got vaccine mandates at your schools or this or that, that's something that's ever come from the federal government, but that hasn't. That's always come from state governments. This is new territory for the Biden administration to enter it after repeatedly promising that they would not. I think this means that it's really shaky, and we're seeing it with police officers, we're seeing it with healthcare workers, we're seeing it with pilots. These are the people that are all very important to keep our economy running and our people safe and protected.
Yeah, I want to follow up to that because that was going to be my next question about the police officers. Some of them are facing termination over these vaccine mandates, and a lot of them are in places where there's high crime areas like Chicago. What do you think will happen in those cities if we have mass amounts of police leaving?
It seems pretty obvious, and it's exactly what's been going on in our cities since 2020 and now into 2021, which is massive rises in crimes. We've heard over the last 18 to 19 months longer from the federal government and from our state governments that if we simply submit, then we'll be allowed to be free and this whole pandemic will be over. And now we're being told that we need to fire our healthcare workers in the name of public health if they don't take this vaccine. And now we're being told that we need to fire our police officers in the name of public safety. These are the kind of things that cause Southwest pilots and others to rise up and say, no, you're not going to do what you tell me. When you're in Chicago or Seattle or other cities, you already have a massive problem with being a police officer. It's not a rewarding job right now. People don't have your back. The politicians don't have your back. It takes a lot to go out there every single day and night and put your life on the line dealing with terrible, terrible situations trying to help. If they keep on pushing, then we know exactly where that's going to end up.
Chris, another thing I want to talk to you about is the border situation. There's a new report by the New York Post claiming the Biden administration is actually moving plane loads of migrants under the cover of night from the border to other parts of the country. What do you make of this? What more do you know?
Well, I know of New York was surprised to hear that the suburbs, that they were getting these flights that were coming in. I just got a phone call now that one of the states, whose governors had explicitly said that they do not want to have any illegal immigrants there. that they're actually flying them in there. I have to confirm this report at the Federalist, and we're going to try and do that now. These are unvetted people who are being flown all over the country without governors' consents. This has been done before in the United States. It's always caused a lot of political turmoil. People think, for example, that Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter don't like each other simply over Bill Clinton's moral character. But their fight goes back a long way. When Jimmy Carter sent a boatload of refugees and unvetted people to Arkansas when Bill Clinton was governor, there was an ensuing massive riot where they were being held, and it almost sank Bill Clinton's political prospects for the future. That's the source of their grievances. This goes across party lines to Republicans and Democrats, where if there are incidents and there is secrecy with the federal government hiding this from governors, well, there's going to be a lot of anger from those governors.
Oh, Chris, so much more we can talk about. Unfortunately, we have to leave it right there. Thank you so much for your time. Christopher Bedford, senior editor at The Federalist. Thanks again. Cuba's communist government is taking public comment on a proposed new family law if passed by Cuba's parliament. The new law would redefine family life, extending to gender roles, rights, and responsibilities. It would also legalize same-sex marriage. North Korea continues its aggressive military posturing with new missile launches today. The country tested at least one short-range missile and possibly a second. The incidents were only hours after the U.S. indicated plans to resume nuclear weapons talks with the North. The UN Security Council has banned North Korea from firing ballistic missiles. Myanmar's military government is freeing political prisoners under pressure from neighboring nations. A regional summit boycotted the nation, also known as Burma. In reaction, hundreds of prisoners have been released, but more than 5,000 still wait. The detained must sign a non-violence pledge as an amnesty condition. Last February's coup led to daily protests and arrests. Mexico City has reached its lowest warning level for COVID-19 since June. Infection rates and hospitalizations have declined since midsummer, even with schools returning to limited in-person sessions. As it returns to normal life, the capital city of 9 million people is set to host its Formula One Grand Prix auto race in 2 weeks. Coming up, China's censorship. Why religious works like the Bible are virtually banned. And persecuted minorities. How China treats people of faith. China's ongoing internet crackdown has closed access to an online Bible app from the U.S. Beijing's requirement of a permit is creating a hurdle for content providers. In compliance, Olive Tree Bible Software has removed its app in China to review CCP limits on religious speech. An app for the Quran has closed, as have other commercial apps, including LinkedIn and Amazon's Audible. Yesterday, religious freedom advocates joined together in Washington, D.C. to discuss growing concerns about the Chinese Communist Party's human rights record. Panelists shared how China is clamping down on dissent and persecuting religious minorities, including Uyghur Muslims, Christians, Falun Gong practitioners, and Tibetan Buddhists. Joining us now is Robert Destro, professor of law at the Catholic University and former Assistant Secretary of State for Democracy, Human Rights, and labor. Robert, welcome. Thank you so much for your time today. As we heard earlier, Apple has removed Bible and Quran apps in response to a request from the CCP. Can you talk to us more about how the Chinese government is finding, new ways to restrict religion, and how also why major corporations seem to be complicit?
Well, the Chinese Communist Party cannot permit any other ideology to take root, and whenever they find any competition, they're going to have to wipe it out. There's one party, one message, and big corporations basically want to make money. They see a big Chinese market, and they don't really appear to have much by way of principle. So they're willingly compliant, and I would say complicit.
Yeah. And, many of us have seen those images of Uyghurs in concentration camps in China and have heard really about the atrocities they face there. And now many Uyghur Muslims who fled to Afghanistan are fearful that they may be deported back to China, in part because of China's ties to the Taliban. What do you know about that? And if that were to happen, what do you think would happen to them?
Well, I think it's a really interesting topic. I'm hoping that that their intra-Muslim connections with one another will make the Taliban a little bit more shall we say, sympathetic with their Muslim colleagues. Because you also know that there's Turkey's very much involved in this question as well, and although they're all in the same corner with China in terms of economic development, the Taliban are very serious Muslims. The Turks are very serious about Islam. And so the question is whether money or Islam will rule the day.
Yeah. And Robert, I also understand that you recently served as United States Special Coordinator for Tibetan issues. There's a new report indicating that authorities are forcing Buddhist monks and nuns to use only Mandarin Chinese. Can you tell us why this is significant? And also, what are maybe some of the other concerns regarding religious freedom in that region?
Well, it's part of what the Chinese Communist Party calls Sinicization, or basically, making Buddhism with Chinese characteristics. What they're trying to do is eliminate Tibetan Buddhism, and the way you do that is by eliminating not only the religious practice but also the Tibetan language. And once you do that, it's just like saying, we're going to have a patriotic Catholic Church. You basically eliminate anything that makes the Church Catholic, and substitute the words of Christ with the words of Chairman Xi. And so you eliminate the Dalai Lama. They've already said that they would like to appoint the next Dalai Lama. That's not the way it's done. And so it's basically the same as they're doing with the Uyghurs. They want to eliminate that population completely and basically have it be submerged in the larger Han Chinese community.
Well, Robert, thank you so much for your time today and speaking with us. We really appreciate it. Robert Destro, professor of law at the Catholic University and former Assistant Secretary of State for Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Up next, representation in Rome. Polish bishops pay a visit to the Holy Father. And Lord of Miracles. See how worshipers in Peru venerate a cherished symbol. Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI included a revealing tidbit in a recent letter following the death of a former colleague. Pope Benedict says his friend has joined many others in the next world. The 94-year-old then adds, quote, "I hope that I can join them soon." For more on the story, including a closer look at the friendship between the Pope Emeritus and Father Bernhard Winkler, visit our partners at CatholicNewsAgency.com. Pope Francis has begun his scheduled meetings with Catholic bishops from Poland. The visits began earlier this month and are part of the scheduled meetings the Holy Father holds with church leaders from around the globe every few years. Poland is one of the most devout countries in the world. More than 85% of the population is Catholic. Joining us now from Rome is Father Leszek Gesiak, spokesman for the Polish Catholic Bishops' Conference. Father, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it. Can you talk to us about the meetings with the Holy Father? I understand they began earlier this month. How are they going, and what sorts of things are being discussed?
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here in EWTN. It's true that we started 2 weeks ago the visit ad limina, the Polish bishops, to Rome. And it's a very special time for the Polish Church. This time, Polish bishops came in 4 groups. Every week we receive one group of the bishops. So we have 4 weeks of very intensive time to work to meeting with the different departments in the Vatican Curia and also the audience to the Holy Father. That's very important for the Church in Poland also, because it's an opportunity for the bishops just to talk about the very actual and difficult problems which we have.
And Father, can you tell us about the state of the Catholic Church in Poland? It seems the country is really one of those strongholds when it comes to the faith in Europe.
The situation of our country is quite complicated. We have a period of secularization, very strong secularization in our people. One of the problems for the bishops, which is important now, is how to coming back to the sources of faith, how to give a new power to the faith of the people. We live in the situation of some tensions in the country, some political tensions, some social tensions. So the people very often, they ask how to live the gospel today, and today reality. So I think that this kind of reflection is very important for the Polish Church, how to reconstruct the sources of the faith for the Church today.
And before I let you go, Father, as you know, later this week we celebrate the feast of St. John Paul II. Can you tell us a little bit about his legacy and how he remains relevant in your country, of course, his native Poland?
John Paul II is one of the most important contemporary saints which we have in Poland now, not only in Poland, in the whole church, but in Poland especially, we celebrate this feast. Also, when the Polish bishops came to Rome, each group on Thursday, they go to the chapel of St. Sebastian in the Basilica of St. Peter, where in the morning at 7 o'clock they celebrate the Holy Mass in the tomb of John Paul II, altogether the bishops and a lot of people. So this particular person was a man who changed the history of our country, who gave us a lot of power, how to live the difficult time during the communist period. Also, he prepared the changing of the political system and also renovation of our faith. So I think that John Paul II today is a kind of example how to follow the Catholic faith in the modern world, how to be involved in the practical things in our apostolical and activities. So I think that we can share with all the Catholics in the world that this very special saint, not only Polish saint, because the Pope is a member of the Universal Church, it's a patron for the contemporary time.
Oh, Father, thank you so much for speaking to us about all of this. We appreciate your time. Father Leszek Gesiak, spokesman for the Polish Catholic Bishops' Conference. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Thank you.
And finally tonight, despite coronavirus restrictions, Catholics in Lima, Peru are visiting a revered religious site. The faithful are honoring the Lord of Miracles. The country's popular procession had been canceled again for the second consecutive year. The image of Lord of Miracles was painted in the early 1650s by an Angolan slave on a wall outside of the city. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.